Near the beginning, I talked about doing 4 or 5 lectures in one go. What did you mean by this? I mean that you should actually be studying an entire topic at once, because when you study this way in layers, the idea of topics being broken up into lectures actually doesn't really make any sense. Like, it's the same topic, right? Like, the lectures are just divided because it's like 1 hour blocks of time. It's not like inherently that they need to be divided most of the time. So you can and should study the topic all in one go, because the way that you make sense of it should be like holistic to begin with. Like I said, that stone block, you want to be able to carve out the overall shape. You can't carve out the overall shape of something if you're just using like the head part of the block. And then you're like, okay, I've carved out the overall shape there. And then you're like, I don't know what this is, because you don't have the whole block to do it with. So you need to have that whole thing that you're working on. But because you're doing it layers, it doesn't matter, because it could be that you're doing 5 lectures worth of topics and concepts, but the actual volume of information you're covering might still only be like 3 paragraphs worth of actual information that you're working with. So the idea of like you could technically study an entire textbook in one go. It's just that your first layer will be so shallow and so thin that you'd probably be reading like 1 word per 10 pages or something like that. In one of my Facebook lives, I mentioned that we can skip the little details in lecture slides. Do we come back to them during the revision? Yes. Yeah. So you come back to it after the lecture. So it goes like this: fundamental understanding, good picture understanding, building on the important details that are like key. They're specific details, but they're the ones that are really important to lock those concepts in. It's like the nail that, like, it's not the decorations in the house. It's like, okay, like, yes, a specific screw might be a very specific detail, but if that screw is the thing that holds the door in place, that's actually quite an important one. The same screw, if it's on the wall to hold up a painting, is probably less important. So important details come after that when you're putting on top. And then you go through again and then clean up all the little details and fine details. Your revision, you're seeing what you missed. Again, any more little details. Flashcards for little bits that you're memorizing, and you do those when they're due. Again, obviously, digital flashcards only. And so roughly by the end of the day of the lecture, you should have learned roughly about 90% level of detail of the topic, including all the textbook stuff, because you will have primed all of it to begin with. So you might think, holy crap, that's crazy to do that at the end of the same day. But it's really not, because when you prime it well, by the end of the lecture, you're going to have a 50% understanding, instead of what normally happens, which is like people have a negative 10% understanding by the end of the lecture. So good priming just makes the whole thing, like ultra lubricates it.